How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're starting Daf Kuf Chav Zayin, Daf 127 of Masechta BavaBasra. Friends, I have a feeling this is going to be a loud one. First of all, Chev, if you listen very carefully, you can hear my mom listening to Babylon Talmud upstairs. You can get the kind of Facebook meta effect. You can hear last week's daf while listening to today's daf. Alright. I was expecting company, I think, and obviously I'm in the basement being antisocial, but I have a feeling things are going to get noisy over here. And although I've been very, very social this Yontif. 1 second. Right, Mom? Right, Mom? I've been very social. I've been very, very social. Where am I? Alright. Gewaldig. Where am I? Oh, gewaldig. Oh, alright. Daniel Tenenbaum daf. Alright, here we go. Daf Kuf Chav Vav Amud Beis. 4 lines from the bottom. Reb Ami says, Tumtum shenikra v'nimtza zocher. Gewaldig. You have a tumtum, a guy or a girl, unclear. It's unclear if it's a boy or a girl. And then they tear him open, and he's a boy. Okay? Mazel tov. So, v'nimtza zocher. Eino nota pishnayim. Well, if he's firstborn, he will not receive a double portion to Amar, because the Pasuk says, V'hoya ben ha-bechor la'asniya. Ache ben mishas havoya. It says v'hoya ha-ben ha-bechor. So the ben has to have a havoya from mishas havoya. All along it has to be a boy. You can't just find it out by tearing it open after the fact. Rav Nachman Beitzchok says, Rav Nachman Beitzchok af eino nidon kiven sora mor. He's oichet not going to be considered. He can't be a ben sora mor. Chaver, we could tell what a ben sora mor is. We're going to learn about ben sora mor Masechta Sanhedrin. Which reminds me, I think I wanted to say this spiel. Cheve, you're excited for the upcoming year in Daf HaYomi? Of course you are. Last year, 1 year ago, I remember thinking about the year ahead in Babylon Talmud, and I knew that was going to be some year, and some year it was. So in a lot of ways, but let's just talk about Babylon Talmud now. Bav Mitzia. Oh, who knew how full our hearts would be with Bav Mitzia? Who knew? And anyways, I knew the whole year ahead was going to be Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, BavaBasra. That was going to be an intense one. And intense it was. Again, we're talking about Babylon Talmud. Intense it was. It was intense in other ways. Intense it was. This year, ahead of us, we have Be'ezer Hashem 6 siyumim this year. BavaBasra, Sanhedrin, Makis, Shavuos, Avodah Zarah, and Horius. So this year is going to be about wrapping up Seder Nezikin. This year is going to be about wrapping up Seder Nezikin. We already learned Bava Kama, Bava Metzia. We're getting towards the end. We still have a lot of work to do, but we got about a month and a half left of BavaBasra, and then we're just kind of the rest of the year is going to be about by a year from now we'll already be in Seder Kachim. A year from now we'll already be in Seder Kachim. So now it's really about wrapping up Seder Nezikin. So Ben Sora Umor comes up Masechta Sanhedrin in the parak. I think it's called Ben Sora Umor. I think, and Daf Samech Ches. I think of Masechta Sanhedrin, and talks about a guy a shtickle nudnik. Anyway, so this tumtum who turns out to be a boy cannot be a Ben Sora Umor. There's a day in the Gemara that maybe there never was a Ben Sora Umor, Dorish v'Kabel Sacher. The whole Indian is just so we can learn about it and receive reward. Anyways, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Omar Afenu Nidon ki Ben Sora Umor, that this fellow cannot be Ben Sora Umor, the Amar Kab, because the pasuk says ki yiyeh leish Ben Sora Umor ajay Ben mishas avoya. Again, it says ki yiyeh leish Ben. So the Ben has to be yiyeh mishas avoya, has to be a boy all along. It can't be a tumtum that you rip open. Fine. Ameimer Amr, says Ameimer, Af Eino Mimayit Chelek Bibechayra. That also he would not be Mimayit Chelek Bibechayra. What does that mean? Well, it means, as let's say you have a father and he has 3 children. A Pashit, alright, we know what a Pashit is now, right? The non-Bechor, a Pashit, a Bechor, and a Tumtum Shenikra of an Imtza Zacher. So the shaila is, when figuring out how much of the estate goes to the Bechor, what's his double portion? So how many ways are you dividing up the estate, right? I mean, let's say there are 5 kids, so you would divide up the estate 6 ways. You give the Bechor two of them, and you give the and then the other 4 get the remaining 4 portions, right? So there's an interesting halacha over here that he's not memayit b'chelik bechor, which means that let's say you have 3 kids, right? There's 3 kids, a pashit, a tumtum shenikra v'nimtza zacher, and a bechor. So the question is, do you divide up the estate 4 ways and give 2 portions to the bechor, or do you divide it up 3 ways? Well, actually, we're talking about specifically the chelik bechora. Actually, we're talking about specifically the chelik bechora, right? Because the bechor gets 2 parts. He gets the regular part as just being one of the children. Then he gets an additional part, the pishnaim, for being a bechor. So therefore, the question is, when you have these 3 kids, so do you be'etzim divide up the estate 4 ways, essentially, right? You got 3 kids, you divide it up 4 ways, and the chelik bechora is sort of 25% of the estate. A quarter of the estate is the bechora. And then the Bechor would also get an additional 25% of the estate, and then the other 2 would get the remaining 2. But anyways, so is it that we divide up the estate 4 ways because we say there are 3 kids, the Pashit, the Tumtum, and the Bechor? In which case, the Chelek Bechora is 1/4 of the estate. Or do we say, no, the Tumtum is excluded from that Cheshbon, and therefore there's only the Pashit and the Bechor, and therefore you divide up the estate 3 ways, and the Pishnaim, the Chelek Bechor, is 1/3 of the estate, and then with the remaining 2/3 you divide it up 3 ways among the Bechor, because that's just the regular inheritance. We're talking about the Bechor over here, so the Chelek, right? So the rest of it you would divide between the Pashit, the Tumtum, and the Bechor. I hope that made sense. So Ameimer Amr says, I'm going to do that again. Says Ameimer Af Einu Mima'et Chelek Bechora. The Tumtum would not minimize, make smaller, have any effect on the Chelek of the Bechor, specifically the Pishnaim, that extra portion. He would not be considered part of the Cheshbon, so therefore we'd only consider the Pashit and the Bechor, and say Pishnaim goes, right, and then the Chelek Bechor is the Pishnaim, i.e. 1/3 of the estate would be considered the Bechorah portion. Shnema v'yaldolo bonim adjiyeh ben b'shas leda. It says v'yaldolo bonim, that there has to be a ben, a boy, at the time of birth, not afterwards. Rav Shezvi Omer says, Rav Shezvi, Av eino nimo l'shmoino, that this boy, his bris would not be doiche Shabbos, right? If the 8th day falls out on Shabbos, so then, right, so Mila is doiche Shabbos, but if it's a tumtum shenikra v'nimtza zacher, it would not be doiche Shabbos. The Amar Kokas, the pasuk says, Isha ki sazriya v'yolda zacher v'yamashmini yimo, right? So achiyeh zacher mishas leda, right? It says v'yolda zacher, that it has to be a zacher mishas leda, not after you tear it open. So only in that case, when it's mishas leda, would the bris be on the 8th day. Rav Sherevia Omar, meaning and bidocha Shabbos. Rav Sherevia Omar says, Rav Sherevia, af ein imoy tmei leda. So his mother would not be Tmei Leda. What's Tmei Leda? Tmei Leda is that after a woman gives birth, she is Tmei for a boy for 7 days, Memele, for a girl for 14 days. Then afterwards, there's a period of Tahara, where any dam that she sees is actually Tahor. For a boy, it would be 7 days of Tumah, 33 days of Tahara. For a girl, 14 days of Tumah, 66 days of Tahara. This would not be Shaykh to a Tumtum Shenikov Nimtza Zocher. The Amar Kra, because the pasuk says again, Isha ki sazriya v'yolda Zocher v'tama shivas yomim ad sheyeh Zocher mishas leda. It would have to be a boy from the time of birth, not after they rip him open. Alright. Meisvei, we have a kasha on Rav Sherevia, who just said the last statement about being no tumas leda. Meisve hamapeles tumtum veandrogynous. If a woman miscarries a tumtum or an androgynous, teshev la zocher vilanakeva. So she basically, we take the stringencies of the zocher and the nekeva. So meaning it would be to make tuma like a nekeva, 14 days. That over the course of 14 days, any dam would be dam tuma, and then whereas normally for a girl there would be 66 days of demei tara, that any dam would be tahor. However, we take on the stringency of the boy, which means that it would end at 40 days from the time of the birth, i.e. an additional 26 days. Right, meaning, so we take the stringencies of the girl, which is that there would be demei tuma for 14 days, and then the remaining days of the first 40 days, so 40 minus 14 is 26, I think. And for the remaining 26 days, there would be demei tahara. But after a total of 40 days from the time of birth, then already she would become tmei again. So we take the stringencies of the girl vis-a-vis demei tuma, and the stringencies of the boy vis-a-vis demei tahara. So we see that even though it was a tumtum and androgynous, so there is demei tuma and demei tahara. So tiyufte de Rav Shirevia tiyuftos, it's taka kasha and Rav Shirevia. Leimatav tiyufte de Rav Shezvi. Why don't we say that it's ochit a shaila on Rav Shezvi? Because Rav Shirevia and Rav Shezvi learned out the same drush betzim. What was it? Isha ki says we have a yalda zocher, right? So v'yalda zocher mishas leida. It was the same drush, both for the bris being on Shabbos as well as for there being demei tuma. So if we're saying that demei tuma doesn't apply, and that we use the same drasha for demei tuma as we did for the bris being docha Shabbos, so if one doesn't apply, the other memela should not apply. Tana sapuke mesapkole. So the Gemara says, look, the Tana is actually unsure, ulechumer, and therefore he's machmir. Meaning, we go lechumer in both cases. Meaning, we're not actually really sure how to learn this drasha of v'yalda zocher, that it has to be a zocher mishas leda, and therefore we're stringent in both cases, meaning that the mila would not be doche Shabbos, and at the same time, right? Meaning, so we use the drasha to say v'yalda zocher is zocher mishas leda in order for the mila to be doche Shabbos, and therefore we say the mila is not doche Shabbos, since it was not zocher mishas leda, only later on once they tore open the baby. And so we're stringent to say, okay, fine. So we'll learn that drasha to say that the bris would not be docha Shabbos, and at the same time, v'yalda zocher was to say that only when it's a boy from the time that it was born would there be tumas leda. We say, well, that's actually a leniency to say that, right. We're not exactly sure how to treat the tumas leda, right? If is there tuma followed by tar or whatever, so we're stringent and we apply the stringencies of both, and say, well, there will be 14 days of tuma for a girl, and then only demei tara for a boy. So we're stringent in both cases. Say that the mila is not docha Shabbos, and that there is still the stringencies of demei tuma and tara. If that's the case, but if that's the case, then why should we should be even more stringent? There shouldn't be any demei tara at all, right? Meaning, we're saying that there's basically 14 days of tumah followed by another 26 days of tara, that any dam that she sees is tahor. But why don't we be even more stringent and say that actually there is no demei tara at all, and after the 14 days, any dam would be demei nida right away? Kasha, it's taka, a good. Kasha Amar Rava says, Rava Tanya Kavosi de Reb Ami, the Reb Brisa supporting Reb Ami, who was the first opinion that we saw, which is that the tumtum shenikra v'nimtza zocher would not receive a double portion if he's a zocher. So we have a Brisa support like Reb Ami ben v'loi tumtum. The Brisa says, right, that it says Vaya ben habechor lasnia ben v'lo tumtum, bechor v'loi safek, and bechor not a safek. Bishlam ben v'lo tumtum. So I understand a boy, a son, and not a tumtum. K'der Reb Ami. It's like Rabami says, right? Not a tumtum wouldn't be a bechor to get pishnayim. What exactly is the scenario of bechor and not a suffix? La'afuke mididarish Rava, to the exclusion of that which Rava darshan, which is the darish Rava shtei noshim shioldu beizchorim b'machbe. If you have two women and they give birth to two boys and they were in like a dark cave or something and they don't know which one is the bechor. They were born in darkness. What they do is they kind of write a document. They agree, I guess, that one of them will be the bechor, and then Memela, that one will collect the bechor either because he is the bechor or because the other one signed off a document saying that he will accept the double portion. Okay. Papa says to Ravin, but Ravin sent, I guess, from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. I asked this question to all of my rabbis. V'lo amruli davar, and they didn't tell me epis gunish. Brum kachamu mishum Rabbi, but they said the following in the name of Rabbi Hukru levasof nisarvu kois v'nashah zeloze, that this harsha, this document that they can write one to the other, is only when they initially knew which one was the bechor. Hukru levasof nisarvu. They initially knew which one was the bechor, and then they got mixed together. Lo hukru ein kois v'nashah zeloze. But if they never knew which was the bechor, such as in this case when they were born in darkness. Where am I? Lo hukru ein kos v'nashah zelazeh. But if they never knew, then they don't write this harsha. Uki Rava Amora Ole. So Rava then I guess set up an Amora, somebody to say over what he was going to say. Right? I think the point is that Rava would it was like a human microphone thing. I think he would basically say to the Amora, and then the Amora would say it. V'darash and Idashin Dvarim Shamayti Lochem Tosein Biyadi. That when I had initially said that if these women gave birth in a dark place and they don't know which one is the bechor, they can write a harsha. That was a mistake. Bram kachamu mishum Rabbi, what they actually said in the name of Rabbi is hukru levasof nisarvu kos v'nashah, that only when they were you initially knew which one was the bechor, only then can you write a harsha. Zelo hukru ein kos v'nashah zelo. But if you never knew which was the bechor, so then you would not write a harsha. And we're saying that lefuke suffik, right, when it says bechor v'lo suffik, to exclude this child born in a hidden place would not be able to receive in a dark place would not be able to receive bechora even if they write a harshaya. Shalchule bnei Akra da'agma l'Shmuel. The people of Akra da'agma sent to Shmuel. Yilamdeinu Rabbeinu, teach us, Rabbi, haymuchzakin baze shu bicher, if they had a chazaka that a certain fellow was a bechor, v'amar aviv al acher bechorhu, but the father says nit, this other child is the bechor. Mao. What do we do? Right? There was a chazaka. It was understood that a certain child was the firstborn. The father says, nit. This is the firstborn. Shalach lehu kosvin harshaya zelozeh. So Shmuel says they write a harshaya, i.e., they write a document. I guess they decide. I guess one of them is the bechor, and then they write a document. This one's the bechor. All right. But the Gemara asks, why should this be the case? Manav shachar, understand. Ikra abonon svirle, Yishalach lukra abonon. Ikra Rabbi Yehuda svirle, Yishalach lukra Rabbi Yehuda. Now we haven't seen, we're about to see this machlokes Rabbanon and Rabbi Yehuda, so we don't know what it is yet. But the Gemara says, I don't understand why Shmuel says they should write a harshaya. There's a machlokes between the Rabbanon and Rabbi Yehuda about what to do in this scenario, where there's a chazaka that this one is the bechor, but the father says that a different one is the bechor. Shmuel should have either said that the halacha is like the Rabbanon, or that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Neither of those opinions, though, is what he said, which is a harshaya. So, misapkale ikra Rabbi Yehuda ikra Rabbanon. Well, Shmuel wasn't sure if we pass like Rabbi Yehuda or the Rabbanon. Mahinu, what's this machlekes? The Tana that we learned in the Brisa, Yakir, that when the pasuk says, what does the pasuk say? Ki es habachor ben asnua Yakir. So the extra, right, because it says Yakir losis lo pishnaim. Why does that say Yakir? Could you say Yitain pishnaim? What's the Yakir is extra to teach Yakirenu la'acherim. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, that the father is believed to make him known to others that he is the firstborn. Mikanam Rabbi Yehuda, from here, Rabbi Yehuda says, Neman Adam Lomar, a father is believed to say, Zebani Bechor, this is my firstborn Yingel. Kach Neman, where am I? Uchshem Sheneman Adam Lomar, Zebani Bechor, and just like a father is believed to say that this is my firstborn Yingel, Kach Neman Adam Lomar, Zeben Grusha v'Zeben Chalutza. Father is also believed to say that this child is a Chalul, he's a Ben Grusha, he's a Ben Chalutza. Whereas the Chacham say nit. The father is not believed to say, right, if there's a chazaka saying that this child is the Bechor, so we don't believe the father to say that the other child is the Bechor. Amalei Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak l'Rava, says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak l'Rava, Bisht, Amalei Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, I understand according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's why the pasuk says the extra word of Yakir, right? Rabbi Yehuda says Yakir, Yakirenu la'acherim. The Chacham don't hold of that. Don't hold of that. So what's the word Yakir doing, Darton? And he'll say Yakir. I understand according to Rabbi Yehuda why it says Yakir, Yakirenu la'acherim. But the Rabbanan don't hold that, Joshua. Yakir lamli. So what do they do with the word Yakir? So b'tzorech Yakir. Well, Yakir is necessary in a situation where there's no chazaka. Let's say they move to town, a new town, and nobody knows this family from a hole in the wall. And now they need to know who's the Bechor. So the father would be believed to say, in this case, it's the Bechor, but not when there's a chazaka about another child. The meiz v'loi pi shnaim. So I don't understand what's the big deal to give him pi shnaim. Lo yei ela acher ilu boy le meiz v'lei b'matona bilo yoivle. I don't understand. A father, he can give whatever he wants of his estate to whichever child he wants as a gift. So why is it important to know that this is the Bechor? If the father wants to give this child pi shnaim, so let him just give it as a gift. Anyways, well, if he gives part of his estate as the Bechor is sort of memele, it's dynamic. Whereas if the father says, okay, I'm giving this property to this child, well then if at the time that he dies there's now more property, well he didn't give that property to that child, right? But if he determines that this one is the Bechor, well then just automatically he would get a double portion of the estate, no matter what was in the estate at the time of the death. What about according to Meir, says that a person can be makna something that he doesn't have yet. So therefore, can't he just say that this property and whatever property I get will go to this child? So Yakir Lamali. So what do you Yakir ben Chosim Shnaflok Shu Goses? Well, in a scenario where he's a Goses, right? When if he gets property when he's a Goses, when he's on his deathbed and he's not going to make it and he can't even talk. So if he can't talk, he can't give a gift. So by making him the Bechor, then he would memele get a double portion. Even if he's a Goses and he's unable to communicate it, memele he would get a double portion. And according to Meir, a Goses, right, it wouldn't, right, the other makna davar she'elo ba'olam would not apply to a Goses because he at least has to be able to give it as a gift. The Goses can't give it as a gift. He can't speak. If there was a certain child who there was a chazaka that this child was the firstborn, and the father says about a different child that's the Bechor, Ne'eman, he's believed. If it's fakert, if the chazaka was that this child was not a Bechor, and the father says no, he is a Bechor, Eino Ne'eman, he's not believed. Reisha Rebbe Yehuda v'Sefer Rabbanon. Okay, so the ratio where we believe him is Rabbi Yehuda, the Sefer where we don't believe him is the Rabbanon. Rabbi Yechanan says, Rabbi Yechanan, Amar b'ni hu, if a fellow says, this is my son, because of Amar Avdiu, and then he says, actually, he is my Eved, Eino Ne'eman. He's not believed to say that this person is his Eved, because if he was in fact his Eved, he would never have called him his son. What are they doing up there? Avdihu, however, if it's fakert, if he says it's my Eved, v'chozvam benihu, and then he says it's my son, well that could be Ne'eman, he's believed him, mishamishli, ke'avda, komer. I hope nobody's trying to get my attention. Well, because they definitely are, but I'm not pursuing it because I'm babbling. Sometimes babbling is a good thing. If he says my son, Ne'eman, he's believed in mishamishli ke'avda, komer. What he's saying is that so if he first says he's my Eved, and then he says my son, he is believed because what he's saying, he's my son, but he's working to me as if he was working for me, as if he's my Eved. But if he was actually the Eved, he would never call him a son, right? So to say he's my son and then say, no, he's actually my Eved, we don't believe in that he's an Eved because he would never call an Eved his son. But if he says he's an Eved, then he says, my son, we say that, okay, he probably actually is his son, he's just working him as, he's working so hard, it's like he's an Eved. And it would be fakert by the taxman. Over al beis hameches, i.e., if they're passing by the taxman, the Omar Benihu, and he says, this guy is my son. And then later he claims that he's my Eved. Well, Neman he's believed because initially by the taxman he only said that he was his son to avoid paying Eved tax. But if it's fakert, if he says to the taxman that this is my Eved, and then later on he claims that it's his son, who Eino Neman, he's not believed because, it makes no sense. Why would he say to the taxman that he's an Eved and be mechayiv himself taxes, and then later on claim that he's his son? We would not believe him there. If by the taxman he said he's an Eved, then he's an Eved, because if he was his son, he would not have called him an Eved by the taxman, because then he has to pay more money, more taxes. Okay, if he's working like a son, and he says he's my son, and then he says my Eved, Eino Neman, okay, he's not believed, like we said earlier, right? That he wouldn't have called him his son if he was really his Eved, so we don't believe him that he's his Eved. However, if he was working like an Eved, and then he says he's my Eved, and then he says he's my son, Eino Neman. We're saying he's not believed, but we said before that he is believed because he's just saying that he's working as if he's an Eved, but really he's my son. My Meitzer Avda Kufzuze. Well, where we don't believe him, I mean, if he says it is my Eved, and then he says my son, we don't believe him if he doesn't just say he's my Eved that's worth 100 zuz. He wouldn't have gone into that much detail. He wouldn't call his son an Eved worth 100 zuz. So the fact that he specifically said he's an Eved worth 100 zuz, that's how we know that it's his an Eved and he's not actually his son. Peace out.